With that, I'm going to introduce our host for the event, and that's going to be Hall Martin. He's the Executive Director of the Texas Entrepreneur Network. So if we give him a round of applause, and thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys for coming out today. I'd like to just thank the City of Austin for hosting this event, part of National Small Business Week. We'll be having more people trickle in as we go forward. For those in the audience, we have angel investors down here that we'll introduce a little bit later in the program. But I was asked to do a short presentation on raising funding from angels and from crowdfunding. And so what I'd like to do is kind of go through a little bit about what that process is. And for myself, I'm an angel investor, been doing it for 10 years, and I've helped start 3 different angel networks in the area. And so I've done a lot with crowdfunding as well as angel investing, and I'd like to share with you a little bit about what it's like to go raise funding. Now, these guys over here are going to be presenting later this morning. These guys down here on the front row are going to be investing tomorrow. And then you guys are watching this thinking you'll be one of these or one of these in the near future. Is anybody out there trying to raise funding right now? Okay, got a couple of guys, great. So what we want to do is go through and talk about raising funding from angel investors. And so the first thing I get is when I talk to people raising funding from angel investors is they most often have very unrealistic expectations about how long it takes to raise money and what it takes to raise money. And so most people think it's going to take a few weeks to a few months to go raise $1 million. And the reality is if you're out trying to raise money, for every $1 million you're trying to raise, it will take you 1 calendar year to raise it. And the reason for that is you have to prepare documents, you have to actually put the pitch together and go out and meet people, you have to work through their schedule, you have to go and update them on your progress that you're doing. A closing process with legal documents takes a month or 2 months, and if you add it all up, it's usually on the order of 12 months, not 12 weeks, in order to raise substantial funding from angel investors. Now, if it's family and friends, that can often go faster, but for people that you don't know, it's going to take more than you think to go out and raise funding. The other thing I see when people go out and raise funding is they really don't have a strategy for how they're going to raise the funding. They haven't really thought about who am I going to talk to, what am I going to say, and how am I going to follow up, and that's very key. When you do angel investing, what you'll find is that or go to an angel investor, you're basically telling everybody, hey, look at me, I've got a deal. I've got a great deal. And you get everybody's attention, and now what do you say? And a lot of people haven't really thought through what they're going to say once they get that attention. You have everybody looking at you, they're looking at your deal, and what the angels are doing is trying to see if there's traction in this deal, there's a team, if there's movement, there's momentum, if there's something behind it. So if you go out on stage and say, hey, look at me, and you have nothing to say, it's going to be hard to raise funding. So think about what you're going to tell people once you get their attention and looking at you. The other thing is, it's the key to successful fundraising is really in the word follow-up. So when I was the director of the Central Texas Angel Network, I had people come in, pitch, go away. We never heard from them again, have no idea what happened to them. They got 0 money. On the other hand, I had people come in and pitch. They would come back next week, next month, every month, give us updates, tell us how things were going, build a relationship. They got money in most cases. And so the key is really the follow-up meetings. They say it takes 7 touches to close a major sale. So it takes 7 touches to close an investment. So the people that come in and pitch and they're expecting to see a checkbook come out, and if it doesn't, well, that's a failed pitch, are unrealistic. The idea is the first pitch leads to the second pitch, to the third, to the fourth, and eventually funding comes out of it. So again, think about how you would follow up with the people that you're working with. Next is having all your documentation prepared. When you go out to see investors, they're going to be expecting a well-prepared executive summary. They're going to be expecting to see PowerPoint pitches, and you'll see some of those here shortly and get an idea of how people are pitching and presenting their business. And then finally, they're looking for some financials. There's some knowledge about what we're going to do with the funding and how we're going to spend the money and how we're going to grow the business. And even though it may not be exactly how it's going to come out, they're still looking for some idea that you know what you're going to do with the funding that comes out as well. And then I always tell people when you're putting your package together, make sure you put a due diligence box together. There's certain documents that all investors are going to ask for, articles of incorporation, your patents, whatever. Go ahead and put that together now. Have that box ready to go, and it shows you're very well prepared for what you're doing. The last point, and then we'll switch over to crowdfunding, is that what I find the most common mistake among first-time presenters is they treat the investor like a customer. They're answering the question, why would you buy my product? Because 90% of their presentation is, how does my product work? But the investor is really not your customer. They are your investor. You're not selling them the product, you're selling them the company. And so they want a bigger picture, not just the product, but they also want to know more about how are you going to make money, what's the business model, who's on the team, what's the intellectual property, what's competitive advantage. They want a bigger picture that goes into it. So in a nutshell, that's what the mistakes people make with angel investors. Now, for those who don't know what angel investors are, I should have maybe led with this, is that angel investors are high net worth individuals who are investing in startups and early stage companies for a return. They're not making a donation, they're not making a social contribution entirely, they're really looking to make a return itself. And they're spending their own money, unlike venture capitalists or private equity guys who are spending somebody else's money, they're spending their own. It's a very different dynamic. They look very hard at these deals before they actually spend it. And so to be an angel, you have to meet the accredited investor requirement. And that's set by the Securities and Exchange Commission. It basically says anybody with $1 million of net worth, not counting the house they live in, is an angel investor. Anybody want to know when they set those rules? Want to guess? Yes, what year? What year did they set those rules? (1968). In 1968, they set those rules, and they only changed it once, which was about 3 years ago, at which point they said you cannot count your house you live in as part of your net worth. So in 1968, if you had $1 million in net worth, you were allowed to be an angel investor. Today, so many more people can be angel investors because they've never really changed the laws. As things inflated, it got to where it is. Now, what you'll find with angel investors is that they're typically not professional investors. Many are, but most are not. They're typically not specialists in one area, except the business that they're working on. They're generalists. They kind of know good business, and they know how to work with business. And so what you'll find is you have to educate them about your industry, about your deal. They don't automatically know what business you may be in unless they're already in it. They know their business very well, but outside of that, there's an educational process you may have to go through to explain what is going on in your industry and why your business is a good one to invest in as well. Now, the reason you want angel investors is, it's kind of a lot of work here, is number one is they can bring expertise if they know your business or they know some aspect that can help you. They can also help bring other people to the network, to the table. They can bring experienced people here. One of the reasons why you want angel investors is that they typically know good CFOs and good CTOs and other people that can help you grow your business. So it's worth having them in there. They also have a standing in the community. If you get them behind you, that really helps with getting your business further along. So a lot of good reasons why you want to do this. Next is, where do you find these angel investors? Well, you always start with family and friends. Go to the people you know already, and that helps a lot. And then look at coworkers, look at past colleagues, look at people that might be angel investors. So start with your network and start working out to find more of these guys. And what you want to do is create a list of these people that are potential angel investors for your deal, and then start to update them about how you're doing on your business. It's an investor relations approach that really goes. So before I jump into crowdfunding, did anybody have any questions? Yes?
Was there a specific event or something that happened in 1968 for them to actually think about setting those parameters?
No, I think it just came about that at some point individuals wanted to invest in these deals, and they had to figure out, can we just let everybody invest or not let everybody invest? And so they came up with rules. And it's kind of like the crowdfunding, the Jobs Act world that came along. There was market demand that kind of built up that says, well, other people want to invest as well. And eventually the wheels of government turned and gave us a law. And then, as you know, laws are very hard to change, and it's just kept on with the momentum since then as well. So to that point, they recently passed a Jobs Act, which lets anybody invest in startups. And so, it goes to the next level. Yes?
So is there actually an equity that gives the certified angel investors a certificate, or do you this certificate?
At this point, no. The question is, do you have to certify or register yourself as an accredited investor? And while there's a lot of discussion in Washington, D.C. about doing that, you have to prove you're an accredited investor. Today, the rule is still self-verification. If you say you're an accredited investor, we believe you, but you usually sign a document saying, I understand this is a risky deal, I could lose all my money. And almost no angel investor I know is actually putting their lifestyle at risk by doing angel investing. But to your point, there's some people say, well, we should really have people verify these rules as opposed to just self-verifying just to make sure. So it may come as a change. So I'd like to jump into crowdfunding. And the reason I wanted to go through that is crowdfunding is becoming a more and more important source of fundraising for everybody. And what we're doing now is we're going to see a lot of portals come up. We're going to see a lot of funding that will come from different groups. Now, first thing I'll say is crowdfunding means different things to different people. And my definition of crowdfunding is you're sourcing funds through the web. And what you're doing is you're going out and getting funding through either mailers or through web portals from people you know or don't know out there. And there's more and more of these coming out. When the Jobs Act will go into effect May 16th of this month, you'll see that there's about 35 new crowdfunding portals will come on the marketplace, 35 more sources of funding for you as well. So what you want to do is use crowdfunding to help build your business as well as raise funding. So when I stand in the angel networks, I'm a member of the Baylor Angel Network myself, about every week somebody comes in and in so many words they basically say, I didn't put any money in, my family didn't put any money in, nobody bought anything, no one else invested, how about you? And of course this is a no, because there's nothing in this business, no one else is there, and the investor doesn't want to, no investor wants to be the first in, they always want to be the last one in. And so what you're trying to do is build support for your business using some of these crowdfunding models that we're talking about. So we'll spend a little bit of time and we'll go through some of these things here. We'll talk about the different models, selecting different portals, and then best practices. And then if you want to invest in a crowdfunding deal, we'll talk briefly about that as well. So there's many different kinds of models. The first is what I call the donations model. And that's getting family and friends to invest in your business. This is not a donation in the sense that it's for a nonprofit, it's for your business, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. Then there's rewards and prepayment. This is the Kickstarter style where you prepay for something. Then we'll talk about the taxes interest rate and the Jobs Act, getting people to invest in your business if they're not accredited investors. Then getting money from accredited investors like equity from angels. And then there's revenue-based funding and there's crowd lending as well. Those are choices also. So when two people come to me and they want to raise funding, the first thing, and they don't have anything built, there's nothing there, the first thing I say is go raise $10K from family and friends. And the message is nobody's getting paid back. This is pure donation. And you should put that up on a portal. You should go and put that on your own website. You don't have to put it on Kickstarter, just put it on your own website. And so the question people usually ask is, well, why am I going to all this trouble to put this on a website to ask family and friends for $10K? Well, the answer is you're going to want to start building your core network. You want to start learning the process of crowdfunding. And by putting it on a portal and having people go look at it and learn, you're going to start to learn how crowdfunding works. And you're going to start to build up people that are supporting your business. So as I said before, when someone comes to me and even their family and friends did not put money in, that's probably not the right message you want to put out there for it. So once you do that, you get $10K, the next thing is you want to go and do a rewards pre-sale campaign. And what you do in rewards is that you try to pre-sell 50 units of your product. If you cannot do that, you don't have a funding problem, you have a product problem. And so what you're trying to do is go out and put it on Kickstarter or GoFundMe or Indiegogo or the three that we normally see out there, and you try and pre-sell it. And what you're doing now is you're trying to build your customer network. You're trying to get people signed up to say, hey, we're interested in buying this. Again, when you go to that angel investor later, this will say a lot if you have that. And then you start to understand customer requirements. Things will start to change as the customer starts to look at your deal. And then it just demonstrates more support for your idea. So once you have that done, next step is you go back to that base of people you know, and because anybody can invest, anybody can now have the opportunity to be an equity investor, you take those customers and you turn them into investors. And here you have to go on a Texas crowdfunding portal or a Jobs Act portal to raise money, but you can raise up to $1 million from these portals in order to run your deal. And now you're basically turning your customers into brand ambassadors. Not only are they using your product, but now they are a customer and they are an investor, and they're going to promote you to other people as well. And then the reason you want to do that is you're going to start to learn the equity investment process. How much ownership do I give away? What terms do I set up? And in a small way, you can start to learn that aspect of it. And so if you can turn these guys into investors, you start to make it more support for your business. So we have in the state of Texas the Texas Interstate Crowdfunding Law, which is very similar to the Jobs Act. And basically, they're fairly much the same. Both you can raise $1 million. In both, you're limited. In the Texas one, you're limited to $5,000 per person if you're not accredited. If you're accredited, you can invest as much as you want. While the Jobs Act is 10% of your annual income. And then you have to run it on an approved portal. And then the funding is limited to $1 million a year. And this is a great way to do it. What you'll find is the Texas version is a little bit more simple version of that. You don't have as many documents to put out, you don't have as many fees to pay, and you can get there a little quicker, but everybody, your deal and the investors all have to be in Texas, which for a lot of people is really not an issue in this case. Once you get to that stage, usually people now need growth capital, and so we go to the angels like we have here, and more they're organizing themselves around crowdfunding portals, and so they're actually, there are several portals out there where you can go raise equity money from these guys through online means. Typically when you go to angels, you're starting at $250,000 and trying to raise more north of that as well. And the reason you want those angels is that they start to bring people that help you build your team. So we got our core network, we got a customer network, we got brand ambassadors, and now we have other team members coming in that come from this process. So that's why you want to use these things, is that you actually get to go out and build more of your company through it. When you go to these crowdfunding portals, what you'll see is there's two kinds. There are broker sites and there are listing sites. Broker sites charge a back-end fee, but they raise money for you. Listing sites charge you a monthly fee, but they're just putting you in front of investors, and you have to choose which of those two portals you want to go after. Not all portals are the same. You have to look at what they charge and what they do in order to choose the right one for yourself. We have a couple more, and then we'll go ahead and close it down and get into our presentations. But there's also what's called revenue-based funding. I often talk to companies that want to raise equity funding for their business. They're going to give ownership. And I say, that's great. When are we going to sell the business to pay back the investors? And 1 out of 4 basically says, we're never selling the business. This is a family business. It's my business. It's whatever. And so equity is probably not a good choice. We then start talking about revenue-based funding. Money goes in, and you're going to pay back out of the revenue. And you'll find there are several portals out there that do revenue-based funding, and for some businesses, it makes sense to pay out. Restaurants, retails are good examples where we're probably not going to sell that restaurant to Google for 10x in 5 years, so we'll just pay out of the revenue every month, and you'll get a nice dividend payment. And for some people, that's a good way to do it. And the other thing I find is when companies get $500,000 to $1 million of revenue coming in the door, the equity is worth a lot, and they look very hard at not giving away any more equity. They don't want any more dilution, and revenue-based funding is a way to get to that place. And then the last one is just crowd lending. You'll find many of the portals out there will lend you money. There's some examples here like Lendor, Opportunity Fund, Funding Circle, where they'll give you merchant pay advances, they'll give you term loans, they'll give you whatever in the form of short-term financing. In the early days, it's probably not a good idea to use debt because there's nothing in the business to pay it back. But later, when the business is up and running, you'll find specific things, inventory fundings, and small things where crowd lending can really help with what you're doing. So those are the presentation I have on crowdfunding. Did anybody have any questions on crowdfunding before we go to our presentation? Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about the various rounds of funding, the stages, how that works?
So typically there's, funding comes in stages. I often get people coming in and they say, I want $1 million. And they don't have anything built yet. And I'm talking them out of that because when you go to raise funding, you're valuing your business and giving a portion away for every round of funding you come in. And so if you're going to angels, I take that $1 million and I say, well, let's just go raise $250K first because we won't give away so much of it. And in a seed stage, early stage deal, $250K is a good starter number, get you up. You don't give away so much ownership of it. As you're making progress with the business, you can then go back and raise what we call a Series A. Now we're going to go raise $1 million or $1.5 million, but we have good revenue, we have good valuation, and so we don't give away so much of our business. But we are diluting ourselves as we do those subsequent rounds of fundraisers as well. And so you're trying to make sure that your valuation keeps going up because you're building values into the business. We have revenue, we have product, we have team, we have IP. This is all coming together in a way that investors can see that. So, did that answer your question, or did you have? Okay. Yes. If you send me an email, I'll send you the slides back, so you don't have to write all the stuff down, and we can go more into that as well. Any other questions? Yes.
The pre-sale, you have your pricing. Yes, you have your pricing for the product.
So in pre-sale, you price the product when you're pre-selling it on the website. For this much money, you get this version of the product. And what you'll find is that's a great way to test pricing. You start to figure out what people will pay for it, what they won't pay for it. I have many people doing pre-sale campaigns out there on Kickstarter, other websites, where they don't take the money, they're just market testing. I'm A/B testing the name, the feature set, the price set, and you can do a lot of testing through that mechanism as well. But you are setting a price and you're learning very quickly what works and what does not work. Cool. No, that's the beauty of pre-selling is you don't have a product. And when you go to Kickstarter, you're basically saying, I will build this product for this price and ship it to you in this time frame. The mistake I think most people make is they don't set expectations properly. I see hardware products being offered where I'm going to sell 50 this month, and by the end of next month, you'll have it in your hand. Well, typically, new hardware products take 6 months to build, deliver, ship, package, and so forth. And so you have to set the expectation of how long it really will take to build that product once we have a successful campaign. Well, it's like a startup, where you're putting money in and getting something in return, and if the startup goes under or fails, there's no one there anymore. So there is a risk. What you'll find with most Kickstarter campaigns is the cost is usually very low. I'm going to give $50, and I'm going to get this widget here. If I lose my $50, well, I lost my $50. It wasn't that much money. It just didn't work out. And so it varies a lot. Some groups deliver great, other groups deliver okay, and some groups plain fall down. And I think they're going to change the laws, and what the direction they're going with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, is if you go raise money on Kickstarter to build a product, you have to use the money for building the product. You can't go use the money for research and design or buying a patent or doing something else. You have to do what you said you were going to do with it. And that's the way most of the state laws are starting to go in, is they're looking very hard at what you said you were going to do, and did you actually do that? And that's a challenge because sometimes you have to go redesign your product to make it go through. Well, in that case, you're going to have to go do another fundraise in order to make that happen. So the market's going to mature and get more sophisticated about that. But it's a tremendous innovation to be able to go and pre-sell something, because in the past, you had to go and find money to go build something, to sell it, and then prove to people that people would buy it. I have people coming to the angel group now saying, I put this on Kickstarter. In 3 days, I got $20,000 worth of orders. And the angels check mark in the box, market validation. Yes, they have a market for it. Somebody will buy this. And they're now moving on to product validation, which is, does it work? But it gets you further down the path. Any other questions? One last question, and then we'll close it.
Just real quick, can you just say again what was in the documentation box, the letters of incorporation?
So what you want to do is go on the website and Google due diligence list. Hundreds of lists out there called due diligence lists. If you go to the Angel Capital Association, you'll get something that is about 11 pages long. It's a little bit overdone. And it has a list of all the things you might want to put into your due diligence package. Because whenever an investor gets serious about it, at some point they'll say, well, I just need everything. And 95% of all due diligence documents are coming from you anyway. So you just go ahead and put your articles of incorporation, your patents, all these things in there. And there'll be a lot of things that are not applicable for your business, but you look very professional if you have a checklist plus all the documents in one place, both hard copy and soft copy format. Whenever I've done due diligence on a deal, I'm often amazed at how long it takes them to go find the stuff. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because it's spread all over the country. You know, it's my patent attorney in New York has that. My accountant in the Bay Area has that. Where is all this stuff? Is everywhere. So the idea is to start gathering that stuff now so you have it available. Cool.